Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I'll talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Charmed. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, let's focus on Harry's side of things. Well, obviously, following him and Maggie follow some clues from the book because they're still trying to decipher it and everything, and this leads to an interesting driver's license, which reminds me of I'm blanking on it. It pisses me off. I'm blanking on it. It's the thing from Doctor Who. It's psychic, and it's psychic paper. I think that's the name of it. Basically, it makes you see whatever you need to see, type of thing. So, but I mean, it seems like it has one particular name on it because obviously when Harry picked it up, it was like, oh, Alex Graves or whatever. But I'm wondering, does it work like that for anyone that picks it up, or does it have to specifically be a white lighter? And it's probably just that one specific name, whatever the case may be. It just reminded me of that. But he goes to this institute, which this institute was kind of existing around the same time, like people like about, claims of like women being witches and stuff like that. But he meets a woman named Helen, which that actress, I've seen her in so many things. Isn't she the same actress that played Jack's sister in Eureka? Or that might have been a different actress. Like the actress who played Helen, you've seen her in so many different things. I just can't place like what's something. I feel like there was something more recent I've seen her in too. But she's one of those actors you've seen her in plenty of stuff. But regardless. Like I was like, wait, is she a witch or whatever? And then she scratches Harry's face and she starts. I was like, oh my god, she's a white lighter. And then there's the whole thing about Alpha and everything. I'm like, oh my god, she's the first white lighter. And something Harry had discovered was like, oh yeah, there's some big risk. There's some great cost that comes from making a white lighter. And then they're like, oh yeah, Helen and her sister were brought here. I was like, wait a minute, is it going to be what I thought it was? And it turns out to be the case. Obviously missed it last episode. I threw out a theory about this whole Harry and the assassin situation. If you're familiar with Kingdom Hearts, I made a Kingdom Hearts reference referencing VIDS and VIDS. Obviously, if you're not familiar with Kingdom Hearts, that and I know I've been talking about a lot of Kingdom Hearts in these reviews lately. I need to shut up, but I can't help it. Just shows you how much I love those video games so much. But regardless, the fact of the matter is, Ventus was just one person. Ventus and Vanitas were one person at one point in time. But then, like, all the light got pulled out and that created Ventus. All the darkness that was left became Vanitas. So they're two halves of the same whole, but they're like pure the other. So I figured that's what it is. And it turns out it's not just Harry, it's all white lighters. Obviously Helen was the first white lighter, but the fact is every white lighter had a dark doppelganger, and that's what the assassin is. He's Harry's, and he uses the term later on dark lighter. Now at first I was like, right, that was a thing from the original show that I completely forgot the term until they said that, because it's like there were plenty of dark lighter. There was a few dark lighters that popped up. I don't remember if it was the same correlation in the original series about like using an example of like basically one being split into two. I don't know if it was necessarily that, but because I do remember the term dark lighter from the original show. I mean, because let's not forget, like, Wyatt, a.k.a. Leo and Piper's oldest son, there was that whole potential future of turning him into, like, the greatest evil rather than, like, the greatest witch/warlock around. So it's that type of thing of, like, I think he might have counted as a dark lighter because he had a bit of Leo's powers along with his own powers as being the child of a charmed one. But other than that, I was like I said, it's been so long, but I barely remembered dark lighters until they mentioned it. I was like, right, that obviously makes so much sense. But I was like, dude, that's so cool. I just found it funny because I'm like, oh, I literally like pieced that together in my head last episode, kind of threw that out there as a theory. It turns out they're totally true. I'm like, oh, that's pretty dope. But I like that being the aspect to it. Like I said, because I don't remember there being like even Leo having like a dark, I can't remember. Like I said, I think this is something that's just doing specifically for this show, but I mean, maybe there was something that was there in the original show, and I'm just blanking on it super hard, but I thought that was so interesting. I do hope he gets to circle back around to, Helen, because it's interesting to know that she was the first white lighter and stuff like that. Because the fact of the matter is, why would you go this entire time having all these white lighters but never telling them that? Because that's what I guess you needed someone to protect witches, but why go through the trouble of making a white lighter if it creates a dark lighter? And what about everyone else's dark lighter? I mean, to be fair, I guess it's like when one half dies, the other dies too. So if Harry wants to stop this assassin permanently, he'd have to probably die too. So Well, to be fair, he did die, but because of his circumstances, he's not bound by the elder. So when he dies, he doesn't die like everyone else does. So, but I think they're separate beings now. So if one half kills the other, then that other half just disappears and the other half stays. So like the Dark Lighter might not have been affected by Harry dying. If so, why would you kill Harry? But I don't know. So you don't see any other Dark Lighters kicking it around. So it has to be a thing of the moment the White Lighters died, so did the Dark Lighters. Or not, unless we're going to go with the situation of Alpha and Harry are exceptions. It's like out of grand scheme of things, because they make it so it's like, oh, White Lighters come at a great cost. So it's like making White Lighters come at a great cost. So you would assume it happened with every White Lighter, but not unless it's a once in a blue moon situation of like let's say like every 1 out of 10, well, every 9 out of 10 times you'll get a White Lighter and no Dark Lighter, but maybe that 1 out of 10 times is when the Dark Light is created in the case of Alpha and Harry. Because I feel like, that'd be something you'd be like, oh, where are they at? Not unless that's something the elders kept quiet. Not unless the elders killed all the Dark Lighters except for Harry's. So maybe that's why he's kind of doing the thing that he's doing in correlation, because it's like he's basically fighting for survival. It's like, oh, I no longer have to be in hiding because the elders are all dead. Maybe that's why he's picking now to strike. I don't know. Which, that's all interesting. That kind of ties into the story of like, okay, so we learn a little bit more about Abigail, who I caught the actress's name at the beginning because I saw it. I was like, right, it's Poppy Drayton. I was like, of course, because it looked so familiar the moment I finally saw it and everything. But interesting twist is we find out that she is Alistair's daughter, as well as, Hunter's sister. And I thought it was so interesting because at first I'm like, oh, you brought all that up, but notice you didn't mention Parker, but she makes reference to Parker later on, which I thought was kind of interesting. You would think that they would have some camaraderie, since the fact of the matter is they're the halfies in their family. But the fact is Parker never brought it up, so I'm wondering, is it a situation of he was unaware? Well, because Parker was kind of cherished so much because he was half human, half demon, because that was the whole purpose of like, oh, being the host for the source of all evil. That was what that was all about. But I guess like Abigail was looked at more of as abomination. She definitely has daddy issues, because like for her it's like, oh yeah, like dad, I'm glad he's gone, because him, like he always, because for her it's it's not even daddy issues, it's more like family issues. I should just leave it at that, because for her it's like, yeah, the fact is, unless you got a penis, you can't run things in the demon world. So she kind of always got overlooked because she's a girl. So it is interesting. Once again, it is still true that she is half and half, but she's still kind of looked at kind of a bit of an abomination, I guess, But like I said, that's why I'm like, I would have assumed her and Parker would have found some camaraderie, but like I said, that depends on whether he was aware of her or not. I even love later on, Maggie's like, yo, like, does she know where Parker is? But Mel's like, I'm not trying to talk to her, because they butt heads so much. Because like Abigail like spent the entire episode talking mad shit to Mel, like, oh, talking about the fact is that she's carrying around potions and stuff like that. And I don't know, because out of anyone, I think she feels the camaraderie with Macy, which I guess because Macy's situation is a little bit more similar, because it's like, oh, like, yeah, my situation with my brother was similar, in the case of Parker, but it's like he was half human, I'm half witch, half demon. Hey, Macy, you're half witch, half demon. So it's the same combination. There's no one else like that. So I think that probably is building that, kinship. But we also got introduced to, what's that creature called, a Cayenne, which that was interesting. It looks like legitimately a demonic reindeer. It kind of reminds me, was it the Spirit of the Forest from Princess Mononoke, just scarier? So that was interesting. Basically the things kind of work like graboids, kind of blind. Obviously not the same way as graboids, but I guess when you think of a blind monster, my mind immediately goes to graboids. It's because someone mentioned Tremors recently, and I've kind of had that in my mind. But regardless, going on a bit of a tangent, but because they're trying to investigate to see whether Abigail's story was true, but it turns out, yeah, it was true. She was attacked by assassins. It's actually kind of super messed up, because we find out that she ended up being the one that killed some of the witches most recently that they were trying to save, because she thought witches were behind it, because obviously there's a bad blood between witches and demons. And it's so interesting how she tries to push like this pro-demon propaganda, being like, oh, innocent demons that were killed by witches and stuff like that. It's like, oh, the fact of the matter is, but I mean, she's kind of fine with them killing her brother and her dad, but it's at the same time, it's also like, well, they're also defending themselves because your dad and brother came to kill them. And I love that the conversation doesn't go to, oh, how did you kill my dad? It's like, oh yeah, well, I killed your dad because I became the source of all evil. I love that that conversation doesn't come up. That might circle back around, because that might be something where Abigail is like, oh, I can take advantage of that in some shape or form. You know, we'll see if that ends up being the case or not. I'm curious to see whether that really will be, like, since it was a thing from season 1, and like I brought up before, like from the original show, the source was something that came back every so often in many different shapes and forms. But I'm curious, is that something that they will tackle immediately? I mean, especially because it's a power grab, trying to reunite all the demon forces. Like, I guess if you got access to the source's power, but there's also this overlord situation, you know, so it begs the question. But the reason why, you know, Abigail killed those witches, because she thought like, oh, they're trying to wipe. It's like, oh, because she thought her friends were just innocently, like, oh, my innocent friends, I guess, were killed or whatever. But it's like, now she realizes like, oh, I miscalculated. I love how you called killing people a miscalculation, because she assumed it was witches, because she thought they sent the, you know, dark Harry after. But it's like, no, they didn't. Because it's also interesting, because that shows that he's hunting both demons and witches, so it's not like he has allegiances to either, but we'll get to that soon enough. What was interesting though is, you know, and that's a sad situation with Mel this episode, because she feels so, because for her it's like she always felt like she was she's like, oh, I was a badass powerful witch, but now without her power she kind of feels helpless. That was something that had come up, like, what was that, last episode or the episode before last, where she was talking about, obviously, like, you know, it's a whole conversation of like she felt powerless. She kind of felt like, oh, I have to stay behind because I'm useless or whatever. Like, she felt that. That was the episode before last, now I'm thinking about it. But because of that, like, I think we're seeing a continuation of that. Like, losing their powers has kind of affected her the most in that sense, to a certain extent. So, but I just thought that was kind of interesting, and she ended up drinking that entire thing to kind of connect with the I'm already blanking on its name, right, the Kylan. But nevertheless, it was interesting because they ended up finding the assassin's main hub, and not only does he have the queen of the Kylans captured, they even showed a Banshee, which I'm like, oh, I'm curious, is that going to circle back in any way, shape, or form? If you don't remember from the original series, it's just kind of Banshees actually play a role in the story, because at one point in time Phoebe ended up becoming a Banshee. I wonder if that just going to be something, whether they actually tackle that or not, or whether it's just supposed to be like it's probably not that big of a wink and nod to the original show. I kind of take it as that, just because, like, you know, because I remember that being a thing of like them being attacked by a Banshee, and even the fact is that Phoebe became one, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong, but like I said, that's most likely me just reading too much into it. But it's like, okay, so he's collecting the top breeds of every group, so he's looking for the most powerful of every group. He's looking for alphas and stuff like that, which we now know Helen is an alpha. But the problem is, Helen's in this interesting situation where it's like, Helen, well, there's good Helen, and then there's dark lighter Helen. So it's like, which one would he potentially go after? Well, they're probably hidden away specifically for this particular reason. But that's what, and I brought this up last episode too, maybe he's looking for his queen, because I thought maybe that's why he went after Abigail and Macy, because he wants them as his queen. Like, maybe that's what he was looking for. But it's like, no, it seems like in the grand scheme, which I was kind of right, but pretty much wrong, because he's collecting the most valuable, the rares, like the top of each supernatural species, which includes Abigail and Macy, because they are as rare as can be, and they're kind of like the top of their class. Plus, getting the charmed ones, well, to be fair, if he wanted to, it's like, oh, the charmed ones could be one package and Abigail could be another, because it's like, oh, she's half witch and half demon, which Macy is, but Macy could get packaged in as one of the charmed ones, so she kind of puts herself in. So that's, because I thought so, because it's like, it's interesting that he went out of his way. So Macy isn't dead from the poison, but neither is Abigail. But now it seems like that's the reason why, because he was capturing all the, it could be for something powerful, like some spell or something. I'm curious what that is. Maybe he's trying to break the bond between him and Harry, which I already feel like the bond is broken, considering the fact that he killed Harry, or at least attempted to kill Harry. I think it still counted as him straight up killing Harry. Harry just happened to come back. But I don't know. He's definitely up to something, so I thought that was interesting. And the sad thing is, Macy went off with him because it's like, oh, what's the password? And we don't hear it, but he gives her the password because obviously he would know it. Because the thing is, it was meant to be something only Harry would know, but they're literally the same person. So he has all the same memories as Harry. So she brings up something and is like, oh, obviously it's this, because he's probably thinking like, well, I don't know. Because our minds must be connected in some way. Well, we already know he's connected to Macy, so maybe he's able to kind of read her mind in that instant. I don't know. That's, me pulling, that could be 100% wrong, but I'm kind of thinking it will be more so because him and Harry have the same mind in memories, but either way, he's got Macy, and I think that that's what he's mainly been going for. So I might be right on the fact is that he's looking for his queen. Maybe he was looking between Abigail and Macy, and maybe he chose Macy. For whatever reason, maybe the demon side in her is stronger than what's in Abigail. Maybe not. But regardless. So there's all of that going down. I do like that at the end. It's like, Abigail's like, oh, maybe I underestimated you, Mel. And Mel's like, yeah, and puts the barrier back up. And she's like, are you for real? So I like that. It's kind of like a nice, it's kind of like letting Mel have the last laugh. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty cool. So along with all that, obviously there's the whole situation with Maggie trying to help out Jordan this episode, because it's like, okay, so Jordan's got a couple days left on, before he has to close the place down, because obviously he can't pay the rent for the space. So Maggie's trying to help him to get him in a position where basically they can raise money I forgot what it was exactly that but she was going to help with Jordan's situation regardless of the circumstances. But at one point she touches him and sees like, oh, I love you. You saved my life and everything. I'm like, she's initially thinking like, oh, I'm getting my powers back. I'm reading his mind, or my empath abilities. But I'm like, no. In my mind, I was like, wait, you're getting the premonition ability. I was like, holy shit, that's so neat. Which is like, obviously it stems from your mom, but obviously once again it's a comparison I've made before already, that Maggie is this show's equivalent, like she is the Phoebe of this show, just because obviously they have similar abilities. Because she was the empath, and I guess that empath, and because like Maggie's story is kind of all about love, she's kind of the one that kind of puts her heart on her sleeve, and that was always a big part of Phoebe's story as well. So it just kind of makes the connection even stronger. Now that she's literally got the power of premonition, which I didn't mean that to be the pun that it was. It's interesting because now we're getting at that level of it. Okay, so everyone's getting their second abilities. So is Mel going to get the whole spontaneous combustion ability like Piper did? I'm curious about that. Macy is going to be interesting to see if she gets another ability, because she does have her demon side and she's got a little more control. I mean, because before, because obviously last season she was just using the evil side, but now I guess because her witch powers are gone, like all she can kind of draw upon is her demon powers, so hence why like she's able to do the whole fireball and flame situation. So I'm curious to see, like, I think it's a situation of like their powers are gone for now, but I think it might be a thing of they're gone so that you can get a new set of abilities in replacement. Maybe not. We'll see. And then that'd be interesting if they did go down that route where it's like, oh, they never get their original abilities back. They have to get these new abilities. Or maybe it's just like, hey, it starts with the new abilities, but that slowly leads to the path of unlocking your original ability as well. We'll see how they end up, handling that situation. But it is interesting what they're doing. Like, I love like Maggie trying to test out the powers. I think it's probably a thing of like you have to make skin to skin contact, because every time she tried to touch Jordan, it was through his clothes. When they touched before, it was like skin touching. So it's like she's awkwardly touching him. Everyone, like she did it once, strike one, strike two, strike three, and he's like, yeah, this is weird. Why do you keep doing that? And she's like, I'm just trying to figure stuff out. But it's like interesting because they did have a little bit of a heart to heart about his situation and where he comes from, because he talks about the fact is he comes from a long line. His family actually was one of the first black families to settle in this area, so he has a connection to this area and everything. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. And obviously Maggie, without going too much into detail, kind of talks about the fact is of like, well, I'm trying to me and my sisters are trying to start fresh because losing their parents and everything. So it's still a fresh enough wound, I'm sure. But But it does seem like they're setting it up where it seems like Maggie does, like, at first it seemed like it was just about her abilities, but even Mel was kind of like, do you kind of like him? Which I think there, because even later on Mel was like, was there something there? It's like, nah, my powers in. And she was like, no, that's not what I was talking about. It's like, let's just go. But I'm like, it seems like she kind of likes Jordan, and she also feels bad because she set up this whole thing to kind of help him out and everything, and she wasn't there for him because, you know, other responsibilities and stuff like that as a charm going. And that's the complicated thing Mel was also talking about. Like, we kind of can't get too close to people, which obviously I think that whole situation is going to break down a little bit, you know, in her case. But it's a whole thing of like, well, Nico's life was literally threatened because of me being so close to her, and obviously because you were close to Parker, it almost led to you getting killed. So it's that complicated thing of being the charm one. I mean, you kind of have to put your life on hold, and once again, that's an aspect that the original charm ones, and from the original show, that was a big part of it too, of like finding that balance. Can you even find a balance? Can you have any form of a normal life while being the charmed ones? I don't think they've gotten to the point where they're tired of it yet. I think, well, there were bits in season 1 where it made them seem like, oh, they didn't, like, certain people didn't like their charm one situation, but others kind of, you know, now it seems like but it's not like later on in the original Charm series where it was kind of like, yeah, they really hated being charm ones because they wanted their own lives and not just have to kind of answer to other people and always look out for other people, you know. So it's that whole complicated thing. So they definitely haven't reached that point yet, but like I said, some very interesting things went down. So I'm curious to see where all these very interesting things take us going forward, especially because of Darklighter Harry and what his plans are for Macy. You know, how the squad is going to get Macy back. I'm assuming is going to be working with Abigail, which Abigail is going to be all too keen about going up against the Darklighter and everything. So I'm curious to also see where her story ends up taking her. It seems like she might be a mainstay this season. Or at the very least, we're going to probably... Yeah, I'll go ahead and say mainstay, because I'm sure we're going to be seeing a lot more of her as the season progresses. So I'm sure they got some interesting plans for her character. So I'm interested to see where things kind of go on that front. Once again, I brought up the whole alpha thing. Like, you would think because she is a white lighter, maybe because she is exactly like Darklighter Harry, he doesn't necessarily need her, or maybe she's the piece to the puzzle of something else. But once again, the whole thing is that she is hidden away. But once again, we'll ultimately have to wait and see where all this ends up taking us going forward. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.